Hello, everybody, and we're back for another Tuesday Lunch and Listen. I have gotten so much feedback from so many of you as to how much you are enjoying this opportunity to get to know our musicians better. And certainly it's a highlight of my week to be able to visit with our musicians and learn more about them. So today we do have Marcia Bookstein. Welcome, Marcia. There you are. How are you?
There.
Technology.
I know, it's not my favorite thing.
I know, but we're all getting better at it, that's for sure.
Well, some of us are getting better.
That was beautiful, Bach. And those cello suites are just an amazing cornerstone, really, of the repertoire, not just the cello repertoire, but repertoire in general. And when I first met you and we were walking and talking, I remember you were kind of immersed in Bach at that time and playing it and learning it again and so forth. It meant a lot to you.
Oh, yes. And again, and again, and again. Yes. Every year I try to go through all 6 Bach suites, although I play the 5th scordatura, which means that the A string gets tuned down to a G and the cello just resonates like a lot more, very differently. But it takes 3 days to get the cello in tune, with that different tuning. So I do that when there's going to be like a long time when I don't have to play anything else. And all I do is play the 5th suite. That's fun.
That's a fun fact to know. And that just adds to the resonance and the overtones by doing that?
Uh-huh. Yeah, because then you have the low string is C, then G, then D, and then G again. And it just, it definitely is different resonance. It just rings like crazy. It's really fun. And then I usually learn, I've learned the Bach suites with this, with the text. And so that is his wife, Magdalena Bach's handwriting. And she transposes the notes so that when you look at it, it says A, but it sounds G. So you have to learn, with the notes and the writing and it doesn't have to be interpreted for you. She's already done that.
So urtext means kind of the original edition. It goes back to the beginning, not some publisher, 100 years later having assumed that this is what Bach wanted. Is that right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So so the 6th suite is written in a different clef. So I use it's written in viola clef. I think it's viola clef. But so I use a regular edition for that. And that was written for 5-string instrument. So it goes way up in the stratosphere. It's definitely the hardest suite.
And the clef, I'm going to also for our listeners, the clef means that basically C ends up on a different stave that all the notes move on the stave and you have to reinterpret from what you might have been reading in bass clef.
Yeah, so we read bass, tenor, treble, and then for Dvorak he wrote treble clef, but we usually have to transpose down an octave for the correct notes. So Dvorak is different, but his music is so melodious. It's like you can't make a mistake. Okay, I've made mistakes. Yes, I have. I admit, but if you follow the music, you won't make a mistake.
This is the incredible thing, I think, for us learning about your life as a musician is this incredible adaptation and intellect and knowledge, and also this the expressiveness that comes through. It's really that kind of meeting of intellect and emotion, and it starts. We've just heard it, but that's an incredible talent to be able to do both?
It's really amazing to me. So before the programs, or right when the program starts, I'm listening to Brahms' third. And what's amazing to me is that you have a composer with an idea, and he writes it down. And the thing with composition is that it expresses emotion, but there are so many rules and so many things that a composer has to think about, like, can an instrument even do this? What's the range? How is it played? Does this melody go in the clarinet or the cellos or the there's so much that goes into composition, but it doesn't sound. So it takes musicians to make it sound. So we're concentrating on getting it in tune and making sure that the note sounds right and it's not harsh, and getting it together with everybody else and do what the conductor wants. And somehow it comes together. And it's taken me 60 years to figure that music is raw emotion, that the emotion tells the story, and the story is whatever your mind decides it's going to be. So, the exploration and the discovery never stops.
I think what we've heard also from all of your colleagues is that part when you said, and then to put it together with your colleagues and respond to them and connect. And that's got to be what's missing right now. You have an interesting story. If I have it right, I know I have it 2/3 right. You have two sisters who are musicians. Is that right? We know Dorothy.
Yes. And so I'm the middle sister, and our older sister, Carol, plays in New York. She freelances. And she's also written a number of children's books.
And she plays the
violin.
And you're cello.
Yeah. And Dorothy, Dorothy started on violin and switched over to viola.
And Dorothy was also a member of this orchestra, just recently retired. But that's quite a family. Were your parents musical? Is this how this all started?
When you said the word family, the thing that struck my mind first was my mother's white knuckle grip on the steering wheel taking us to our lessons. So she had to learn to drive in order to take us to our lessons. And LA is not a picnic. It is not a picnic. There's no left-hand turn lanes. You have to decide if the oncoming cars are going to knock into you or stop. Or, it is really scary. And she had to take us to our lessons. So yeah, that was. So what was the question again? All I could do is.
Were your parents musical?
Yes.
Is that how you all started?
Yes. So my mother played the piano. My father, I think, partly fell in love with her because she played the piano. So I don't know if you noticed the piano behind me. That was my mother's piano, and so I looked up the serial number. So the serial number is sort of stamped in bronze inside the piano. It was made in 1919. That piano was over 100 years old, and my father gave it to her as a wedding gift.
Oh,
isn't that sweet?
That's a great story.
So my father wasn't musical, but he loved music. And his mother was an amazing singer. She would sing Russian folk music. And his parents, so they came from old Russia. And I told this to Maestro Paiare because we played Shostakovich 11. And it's called January 6th. No, was it January something? Uh-oh.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I'm
remember.
Blanking on it for the moment.
Yes.
But
so there, in 1906, peasants came to the Tsar because they were starving. It's in the wintertime, they're starving. They don't have heat. They have nothing. And the Tsar has everything. So they gather in the square in front of the palace. And in the music, you can actually hear the Tsar thinking, like, what do I do? He ordered his troops to kill everyone. And I think, so that's when I think my grandparents knew the writing on the wall. My grandmother did, her family, because they weren't married yet. And they came to America before 1906. And my oldest my father's oldest brother was born in Canada. So did I say the US? Yeah, they came to Canada. My mother's family came to the US, but my father's family came to Canada first. And my grandmother was part of a group that was socialist Zionist, starting in 1880. And she sang her heart out, those old Russian songs. And she loved Tchaikovsky. And being an American, I didn't get it. You know, Tchaikovsky's so overwrought. He pounds his chest. We here in America, we don't pound our chest. We sulk. We crap about stuff. We don't pound our chest. So it was one summer, and not too long ago, that we were playing March Slav again. So you have the melody, right? Dun, 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 dun. It starts out forte. The second time it comes double forte. And the third time it's fortissimo. It's like, oh, come on. Let's get over it. Anyway, so I'm taking improv lessons, right? And we're doing emotions. And I'm thinking, you know, Tchaikovsky meant triple forte when he wrote triple forte. Let's do it the way he actually wanted it heard. So I did, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is how it goes. It's actually satisfying to do it this way. It belongs here. Okay, so that's the story with my family and music and what I learned from them.
I remember Raphael Payari telling the story when the orchestra was performing the Shostakovich 11th, and he said, this is very personal because Marcia's family was there. And these pilgrims came pleading their case and said, you know, we need food, and instead there was blood on the snow, as we know. But I really remember that. Look, Marcia, we have a couple of questions from the people on the line. So let's, what is it about the Bach cello suites that makes you want to relearn them every year? Why do you keep coming back to them?
Oh gosh. Well, why do you keep needing hugs? Why do you keep needing to say to somebody, I love you? So the music is so beautiful and so satisfying. And it's so, and you're playing alone. So like right now, what am I doing? I'm not playing with my people. I'm playing alone. So what is there to play alone that's totally complete, all on its own? So it's the Bach suites. They keep me company, and they bring me wisdom. What wisdom I have. I'll pretend that they bring me wisdom. They're just so beautiful, all on its own. And the thing that gets me about these suites is that Bach wrote them for the King of Prussia, whatever. I can't remember who he was. But, you know, it's funny that he wasn't the important one. That Bach has outlived his boss's importance, like by hundreds and hundreds of years. So in the old days, it was the king that was important. Now Bach is important. So the other thing is that it can't be perfect enough. No matter how wonderful a cellist you are, there's always something more that you can attain. There's always, you know, another interpretation, like the Bach that you just heard. I listened to it with Jen, and I thought, it's so slow. And I thought, well, you can play it, you can make it sound right slower, and you can make it sound right faster. It's almost like a different piece when you play at a different tempo. So, you know, some years I'll think, oh, it goes slow, and some years I'll go, oh, let's try it a little bit more briskly. So I mean, his name is appropriate. It's basically stream. It means, you know, like a brook or a stream. And you don't step into it twice. You step into a different stream because the water keeps flowing. So, yeah, okay.
That's a very good answer.
I love Bach. What can I say? I get my hugs from Bach.
Yeah, that's a beautiful answer, and such a fundament to all of music, isn't it? And it does, just to listen to it kind of is grounding and centering. So we talked about your sisters. Did you, as you grew up, did you play together? Did you?
Oh, yes. yes, we had the Zeven trio. And so we played together until we couldn't stand it anymore. You know, so I have a dog, right? I used to have three female dogs, Sherry, Ella, and Pickles. And they did not get along very well. And it was everything that I could do to not have fights in the house. So my trainer, I learned that females, like when you have two females, even if they're sisters or mother and daughter, they usually don't get along. Males, after they're, do away with their balls, they they get along with everybody. They get along with each other, themselves. They get along with females. So so yeah, we played until we couldn't take it anymore, and that helped our relationship.
Well, it's interesting. I once read a book about a string quartet, about four individuals, and in fact, it was a novel, but it was based on a string quartet that was in Jerusalem, and and the connectedness musically, but the kind of arguments or the challenges that a string quartet goes toward, because there's no conductor to say, okay, I disagree with you all, this is how we're going to do it.
Mhm.
That it really requires this incredible collaboration, and there's not always agreement.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And that sort of like bleeds over to personality, different personalities and outlooks. And yeah, I think it's hard. And the thing is that like the Cleveland Quartet, were there two married couples or just one married couple? I mean, it's like, how do you do that? And
Mhm.
there must be like a great deal of mutual respect
Yeah.
to be able to do that, and a way of looking at music that is, it's mutual. Yeah.
So was the cello chosen for you as the middle child, where you said cello's yours, or did you choose the cello?
The cello was chosen for me. So here's the story. Um, we were all allowed, so we all had to play piano when we were 6. And when we were about 9, we got to choose another instrument. So I wanted to play the French horn. I thought the French horn was the king of all the musical instruments. And my mother said, no, you have asthma, you can't play the French horn. So then I said, how about the flute? And she said, nope, same reason. Well, how about the harp? And she says, I'm not schlepping that thing around. And then she said, how about the cello? And I said, ew, that boring droning instrument? And it turned out I didn't have a choice. There was a cello floating around amongst their friends, and I was given the cello, and I determined that when I played the cello, it would not be boring and droning. And I think I have succeeded.
Yes, you have succeeded.
Thank you
It
for
is a
that.
beautiful instrument. That's
Thank you.
beautiful. Yo-Yo Ma will tell the story that the cello was chosen for him as well. That it didn't just miraculously one day say, that's what I want to play. Speaking of famous cellists, I note in your biography that you had the opportunity to meet and hear and perhaps even work with two unbelievable cellists, Piotr Gorski in a masterclass, is that right?
Mhm.
And Jacqueline du Pré. I never had the privilege to meet either of them, but tell us what you take from having contact with the past. I mean, Piotr Gorski is a legend and is a connection to the legends that came before him. How does that stay with you today? Are there things you remember?
Oh, yes. So I was an auditor. I was an official auditor. So I played about every other week, and I never knew when I was going to be asked to play. So I was pretty much a neurotic mess from the ages of 18 to 22 when I was in the class. I took copious notes, and I've got them, printed up. Well, let's see. I copied them. I typewrote them, and then I copied them several times. You remember the typewriters. I didn't correct my mistakes, tons and tons of typos. Um, but the main thing I got from Piatigorsky's class, he said so many times, you need to be your own best friend. And so many times we're frustrated with ourselves and we just can't get it right. There's so many pitfalls in playing, you know, the bow, the fingers don't want to work together. And so we tend to criticize ourselves. And when we criticize ourselves, we get discouraged and frustrated. And so this was like the thing that I remember him saying the most: that you need to be your own best friend. And I still am working on that. He also talks about fingerings. I love this. So he tells the story. One of his students wanted, so he didn't give fingerings. That was just like his rule for himself. Didn't want to give fingerings. So one of his students insisted. He said, I want fingerings. I need your fingerings. And so Piatigorsky took the music and he wrote some fingerings down, gave it back to the student. So the next week the student comes back and he does his fingerings, and Piatigorsky says, who gave you those terrible fingerings? And the student is, you know, we had the greatest respect for him. We showed, and the student is shaking, you know. And then Piatigorsky said, fingerings are like a passport. They are your individual thing. And he gave us some crazy fingerings, but they work. So my personality is that when I run out of fingerings, I change, I shift, I make a shift. Other people shift ahead of that need. Those are the reasonable people. And I run by the seat of my pants. Not always a good idea. So I have often gone to my wonderful colleagues and asked for their fingerings, and they're good enough to give them to me. And I'm so grateful.
So as a non-string player and other people listening to this, let's just talk Bach. Do you play it differently from time to time? Do you change the fingerings in Bach? And by fingerings, you mean which string you play the note on and where you have to place your finger for each note. Is that correct?
Yeah. So so we have 4 fingers on this hand, and then we have a thumb. So the thumb is called the thumb. And this is first finger, second finger, third finger, and fourth finger. And so like we played, so I'm going to give you the example of Beethoven's Third Symphony. So it's E flat, G, E flat, B flat. So da 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 da. All it is a triad, and there are about 7 or 8 different fingerings that I tried. So do you start on the G string? Do you start on the D string? And if it's a G string, do you start on a 4th finger, the 2nd finger? You can even start on a 1st finger. So you have, for every note, you have a choice of 4 fingers. And so I finally came to something that I like. But when we do it again, I don't know if I like that fingering. I'll have to go through the same process all over again. So
that's fascinating. That's great. Piatigorsky, a very different cellist than Jacqueline du Pré.
Yeah. So studying with Jacqueline, she already had multiple sclerosis. And so I don't want to be a downer, but she was a wonderful human being and a wonderful, wonderful teacher. And the way she was treated by other people was just horrendous. It was absolutely horrendous. But I have a funny story for you. So she has a biography, right? Carol Easton wrote her biography. Before that, there was another biographer, Wordsworth, and I read that biography and I thought, this isn't really a biography. So I get lost a lot, all the time. They did research on rats and they find that there's a GPS system in your brain and you either have it or you don't, and it's not possible to learn it. I do not have that GPS system. I get lost all the time. So I'm in London, I'm studying with Jacqueline du Pré, and I'm going to the Covent Garden Opera House. I'm going to see a ballet there. And the Covent Garden Opera tube is way underground. It comes up. So you go out one side and you go out to the Flea Garden, and the other side is to the Opera House. And I went out the wrong side, and I could not figure out how to get 180 degrees around the tube station to the opera house. So all these people are passing by really quickly, really quickly. And finally, somebody comes by and she's walking at a more sedate pace. And I said, oh, excuse me, do you know how to get to the Covent Garden Opera House? And she goes, no, I don't, like this. And I go, you don't come from around here, do you? And she goes, no. I said, where do you come from? She said, Torrance, which is a couple miles south of where I grew up.
Oh, wow.
So we got to be friends. And she said, you know, I came to London to do Jacqueline du Pré's biography, which is amazing. They said, come to a lesson with me. So she came to a lesson. And then she asked if she could read to Jacqueline du Pré, because at one of my lessons, I said, to be or not to be, that is the question. And she didn't know where that came from. She had practiced her whole life, and that's it. That is it. So Carol said, can I come over and read to her? So I asked Jacqueline, and she said, yes, please. So Carol would come every week, and they would have giggleitis, and they would laugh, and they would read books and poetry and make stuff up. And then Jacqueline du Pré asked her to do her biography. And apparently there's some kind of rule that you can't do a biography of your friend. So Carol left to go back home for a year. And she thought, I'm the only one who can do this biography. So she went and she did tons and tons of research. It's funny, she said she got most of her information from the dressmaker.
Wow.
And she told me things that she could not print because she didn't want to get sued. And then she came out with a beautiful biography. And it's because I get lost.
You had a huge impact.
Yes. And
we have a story because of it.
Yes. Yes. And I've met the most amazing people because I get lost.
Marcia, it's been great to spend some time with you today. I think you have another piece to close. Is there another
yes.
recording? Would you like to introduce that?
Oh, sure. It's Swan Lake. It's a cello solo from Swan Lake. It comes as a duo, and it's from the Pas de Deux. So I think this is the place where Odile has to say goodbye to her lover. I think that's what it is. But anyway, it's just a gorgeous adage between two people. So and I have to tell you something. I wanted to see how many portamentos I could squeeze into this 2.5-minute piece. And I also wanted to say that portamento is Italian, and it sounds a lot like portmanteau, which is French for baggage, for luggage. And so it's a way of going from one note to another note. And I tried to do anyway, you'll hear it. But
we look forward to it. You've given us something to listen for and something else to learn. This has been such a joy, and we wish you well. We can't wait to see you back on that stage with your colleagues.
Oh, thank you.
Well, in the meantime.
Well, take care of yourself. Everybody, take care of yourselves.